Hello everyone, thank you for joining me in this session today where we will discuss how to deploy a sample WordPress application to AWS EC2 instance using GitLab provided template. My name is Sam Rakub. I'm solution architect with GitLab and I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. These are my contacts. Please feel free to reach out and connect after the session if you have any questions. I'm always happy to connect with awesome people in the industry. So, you know what? I thought the best way in order to understand the steps for automating and using GitLab pipeline for deploying applications to Amazon EC2 instance is basically to use the same sample application AWS is using in their documentation to explain the usage of CodeDeploy for deploying applications to an application to EC2 instance. So let's review together quickly AWS documentation for this sample. So basically, this is AWS documentation, and the steps are very straightforward. First, you have to create a Linux machine, right? In order to deploy the application. So basically, you provision that Linux machine and you prepare the security rules for the inbound and outbound access to that machine. And then you need to prepare the source code to be deployed to the EC2 instance. In our case, it's a WordPress application. So basically, we are pulling that WordPress application, creating the required directory structure inside that application, right? And then creating a set of executable files that will be used during the deployment, will be executed by CodeDeploy in order to install and configure the WordPress application. So as you can see here, we need to create an install dependencies application file, and then a file for starting the server, file for stopping the server, and file for creating a test database. So these files you need to create a sh files, put them under the scripts folder, and then later on we'll see they will be used by the CodeDeploy in order to install and configure the WordPress application. Cool. It's all about changing the access and then, of course, adding an application file. So this is where you need to create a specific file with a specific name, spec.yaml, as per AWS CodeDeploy requirements. And this is where we will specify the different, before the different triggers where the files we created above will be used. So basically, before install, please run for me install dependencies, and that install dependencies is the one we created here, this one, and then of course after install, application start and application stop. So these are hooks for executing certain scripts at different stages of the application deployment, right? Cool. So far I've created an EC2 instance. We've created the configuration files, and then we have created the main, I would say, manifest or configuration file for the CodeDeploy that instruct CodeDeploy when to run which configuration file out of the scripts files we created before. Then we need to upload the code to S3 bucket, right? So we have downloaded the WordPress application. We created the required folder structure inside, and then we need to push that into an S3 bucket. So basically, you need to create an S3 bucket, create the proper access or give the CodeDeploy the proper access to that bucket, because of course it will require CodeDeploy service will need to access the S3 in order to pull the code, the WordPress code. And then here you need to register an application using create application command, and then use AWS deploy push will basically, what we'll do is we'll go into the created WordPress folder we created in step 2, and we'll zip that folder, the contents of that folder, and we'll push it into the S3 bucket we have just created. Along with this step will create the application. So now we are ready to deploy the application, right? So the deploy application step, well, basically first you need to create, of course, you need to create the deployment. And when you create the deployment, basically you're telling, okay, this deployment group first is associated with that, with the EC2 instances with these filters. And of course, these filters or these tags are the same tags we assign to the EC2 instance we created in step one. So basically, I'm telling CodeDeploy, please, when you deploy using this CodeDeploy group, CodeDeploy group is associated or is targeting EC2 instances with these tags. And then, of course, you need to create the association, which basically will install CodeDeploy agent into that EC2 instance, of course. Or CodeDeploy will need to run on that EC2 instance. It will need to have an agent installed there. So the best way, as per AWS recommendation, is you need to use create association. And then, of course, the final step is create deployment. Create deployment is gluing or gathering everything together, bringing everything together. I am passing the code, the deployment group we've created. I am passing the application name, the one we created in step 3, right? And we're choosing the deployment config name. I won't go into the details, but basically this dictates how you want to provision your application. What is the strategy for provisioning that application? And in this case, it's one at a time, which means provision everything one at a time. How many running instances you may choose to have, like blue-green deployment or canary deployment, where multiple instances of the same application at some point can be running in parallel, right? And of course, here I am telling him, deploy for me the application you will find under this bucket with that application name. So bring everything together and deploy, right? So I wanted to review this with you so you have an idea on the steps required today in order to push an application into CodeDeploy, into using CodeDeploy into AWS EC2 instance. So now let's switch the gear. Now let's switch into the GitLab way, or let's say using GitLab provided template. And just to give you a background, when I say template is basically set of commands or jobs that can be reused in many pipelines just by including them. So instead of retyping them or copying and pasting these commands in each and every pipeline where they are required, simply you can create a template and make that like a reusable piece of code where you can include it just by doing include in the pipeline. By doing that, GitLab has created for our customers what we call CloudFormation, AWS /CloudFormation -provision and deploy ec2.gitlab-cr, which is basically a template that will save you most of the steps that we have just seen in AWS documentation. These all steps will be automated, and all what you need to do is to provide the configuration files, right? Where how you want to create the infrastructure, the application you want to like the S3 bucket where you want to host your application, and then everything else will be automated. I'll give you an example. What you see here on the right is a pipeline file, and as you can see, I am using GitLab template. I'll come to this part in a second. I'm using GitLab template, and the only job in this file is the build job, which is basically, I am a developer. I am responsible for building my application, right, and making it available in a path where artifacts means this file is available for subsequent jobs to use it. And in my case, it is in the public folder. So basically what I'm doing here, I am using whatever. In this case, I'm using the Ruby image, but you can use other images. All what I'm doing here is I'm making a folder, right? I'm copying my WordPress application from the repo where this project is hosted, right? And copying it into that public, into that folder, which is named public ls just for to confirm. And then I'm making this folder as an artifact where the content of this folder will be preserved to be accessed by subsequent jobs. And by saying subsequent jobs, these are the jobs included in this template, which are the jobs which will create the stack, push the application to EC2, and then deploy the application. Create the stack, as I think you can guess, is where it's similar to creating the EC2 instance in the AWS example, right? So this is where the template will go and create the required infrastructure in AWS to host my application, right? So as you would expect, the input for this create stack is a JSON, as a YAML file that tells, it's a JSON file, which is a CloudFormation JSON file that says, okay, basically, please take this file and create for me an infrastructure using CloudFormation in AWS, provision for me the required infrastructure. Second, the second job is push to S3. The second job is in the template. Basically, push to S3 will do exactly as AWS CodeDeploy push, which we saw in AWS Documentation. In the backend, it is using that command. It will wrap whatever available for deployment, right, and push it into a target S3 bucket. And the question here is what it will wrap. I will tell you, it will wrap whatever you have in this public folder. This is where the code is available, right, for being deployed. The third step is basically deploy the application. Go take my application, take the configuration files for the application I am trying to deploy, and basically have it and deploy it into AWS EC2 instance. You know what? Let's switch into the demo mode. Okay, right? I think it's better. So this is the pipeline file I was referring to here, right? And this is the job I was just describing, right? And what are the configuration files for this job? As we agreed, first the create stack, which is the CloudFormation stack file available in my repo, right? So let me switch to the web IDE. By the way, GitLab provides a built-in web IDE where I can navigate and change the code and review and create the pipeline without even leaving the platform. So under here, you see that I have, it says here, okay, that script AWS is available under this folder. So if I go under AWS and create stack, you see that this is a typical normal CloudFormation template. And what it's doing is it's creating an application in AWS, creating a deployment group in AWS, and basically creating an EC2 instance, right? It's up to you. You can go beyond just creating an EC2 instance. You can create a full deployment, load balancer, target groups, auto scalability group, all the required, networking, security groups, as you can see here, it's created. The whole thing, right? It's a typical CloudFormation template. So this is the first one. Second one is basically create and push. So this is a simple. This says, please take whatever in the public folder. Remember, where is that public folder? This is where it came from, here. I am making that folder, right? You can call it whatever. You can call it my name, Sam, right? You can call it whatever you want. It's basically you are creating a folder, you are making it available so that the copy to S3 job can access it. And that copy to S3, how it will know about this job? Because I am in the deployment, I am passing the configuration says, okay, this is an environment variable called CI AWS Caesar. It has to be the same, of course, the same name. And basically, I'm passing the name of that job here, so it is available here. And the third one is basically is the create deployment. Again, this is the JSON file for the create deployment. What's doing is basically I'm taking that deployment. Remember this one? We saw it in AWS documentation, deployment group, the name of the deployment group, and then please take this from the S3 bucket. Again, this is the S3 bucket which we used in the here. This is where we pushed our application in the S3 bucket. So please glue everything together. Take the code I pushed into AWS S3 bucket and use that deployment group, use that application, and basically deploy my application. So by the way, the deployment group was created using the same CF in the same step with the create stack using the CloudFormation template, which is creating for me an application, creating for me application name or deployment group. Just to compare, these two are the same as these steps here. Excuse me. So basically, it is, if I go here, this is where where is that? So this is the one that pushed the application, and if I go to the deploy, you can see that it's created a deployment group. So that deployment group, and then create the deployment is same as creating the deployment group here. And if I go, I think here it's under the application, add an application file. Yep. So this is where we added the application file before, and there was a line for registering the application itself. Just looking for that somewhere here. Yeah, here it is. So this is the line where we register the application, and this is where the same exact line where we are using Cloud Stack to CloudFormation, sorry, to create that application. So the end result is, if I go back to my pipeline, the end result is, as a developer, I'm trying to deploy an application to AWS, right? As a developer, I know how to build my application, and this is where I will build my application. To deploy to AWS, what do I need to do? I need to deploy my application and then just pass how do I want to have my infrastructure, my application pushed, and the deployment to be done. And to do that, these are the three files. And by the way, most of the time, these files will be the same or very similar, let's say, between projects. The three files I'm passing, the main files are create stack, which is responsible, remember, responsible for creating all the required infrastructure provisioning the EC2 instance, creating the deployment group, and creating and registering an application in AWS. Second one is the push to S3, which will take the code I have built in my public folder, the one I defined under the artifact in the build job, and I will pass it or push it into S3. In the background, it is calling AWS deploy command, which will basically package the code. If you see here, all what I've done is I've just copied the code, right, from here to this one. So it's not zipped file yet, right? So once the second job in the template runs, it will zip the file and make it available in the bucket. And the third one is the actual deployment, which basically will take the application name we created in the create stack, the deployment group, which was created in the create stack, the file, which was the zipped file, which was created during the S3 push step, and then do the deployment to the target EC2 instance. The end result is a full pipeline out of just including one template and just adding one job. To have a look on the pipeline itself quickly, we can go here under the pipelines, and If I run a pipeline here, just to show you, then you see that, okay, I'll just trigger it here, manual. So it will, this is the first step. Again, quiz, what's using? It's using create stack JSON file, which we define. So this will create the stack. This is the only build. This is my job. This is it's not in the template. This is the job where I build my application. And if you remember, I made it available in the public folder. And in the review step, actually under the review step, there are two stages. EC2 push to the S3 bucket and do the actual deployment, which is take the code, take the application name, the deployment group, and deploy my application. The end result is I am going from nothing in AWS console into a completely deployed application into that one. So I won't keep you waiting, but let me see if I can go quickly to the console here. Okay. Oh, never mind. I won't do that here. So it's okay. So it is, trust me, it is deploying into an AWS instance, AWS deployment. And yep, that concludes my my code for today, my demo for today. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.